Okay, this is it. The prediction for Tyson Fury versus David Haye. I have had the prediction in my mind for a while now, and who I think is going to win the fight. But let me talk you through why I think the fight I've selected is going to win the fight. Let's take David Haye first and foremost. Former cruiserweight champion of the world and heavyweight champion of the world. I don't really want to focus on the cruiserweight. I want to focus about him as a heavyweight. The only thing I will tell you is this: from cruiserweight in the amateurs, where he fought Solis, David Haye, when he was on top in his fight against Solis, he looked great. When Solis started throwing punches back, David Haye seemed to mentally crack. Okay, so somebody says to me, okay, that's the amateurs, let's look at the pro game. So we get into the pro game and we'll say, okay, so he fought Carl Thompson. He was a young lad when he fought Carl Thompson. He was bombing away at Carl Thompson. Carl Thompson absorbed everything that David Haye had to offer. David Haye basically shot his bolt, and we all know what happened with Carl Thompson. Then we say he fought John McCormack for the championship of the world, and he was badly hurt, composed himself, knocked out Mormick, and he ran through Enzo Maccarinelli, and he's gone up and come and fought in the heavyweight division. I don't care what anybody tells me. His fight when he had that shootout against Monty Barrett, he was dropped. Why it was not considered a knockdown, I don't know. The Valuev fight that everyone raves about, let's be honest, he threw very few punches in that fight. And if you want to rave about the fight with him and Valuev, then I'll rave about the 45, 46 or 47-year-old Evander Holyfield's performance against Valuev, where he got inside, unloaded punches in combinations and thoroughly outboxed Valuev, and I have no reason why he never won that fight. Okay, so then David then fights, I believe, John Ruiz in his first defense. John Ruiz came out of retirement, and you know, David took 8 or 9 rounds to get rid of him. Fair enough. But even then, David was getting hit. He got hit by Ruiz, he got hit by Valuev. All the guys David Haye fought was hit him. Then he fought Audley Harrison. Oh, yeah. Even good old Audley, I think, hit him with a jab. But, you know, I still have my suspicions about that fight. I don't know if Audley was deserving to be fighting for the heavyweight championship of the world. You know, we say that now, but, you know, and everyone believed he could do it. It was all in that left hand, but poor Audley. And since Audley, let's see what was next. Then we have the defense against Vladimir Klitschko. I want to point to this fight. This fight is where, you know, a lot of people heard David say a lot of things. He was going to do this, he was going to do that, he was going to do this, he was going to do that. It seemed to me the game plan was that Vladimir Klitschko had a weak chin, and it's all David had to do was throw that big right hand, a haymaker, land it, and the fight would be over. That didn't happen. Vladimir Klitschko hit David early in the first round, as far as I'm concerned. He hit him hard in the first round, and David wanted no part of Vladimir Klitschko, did not want to get knocked out, did not want to engage, and tried to ambush by trying to throw shots from way out and not engaging. And on the flip side of that, Vladimir Klitschko himself, who had been knocked out and knocked over beforehand, was very interested, was more interested in protecting his chin and not getting caught with a punch. So therefore, at no point in time was Vladimir ever fully committing and throwing punches, because he was aware of what was coming back. So people who turn around and say to you, you know, well, David took some great shots against Vladimir Klitschko. Yeah, he took some good shots, but bearing in mind, Vladimir did not land fully with punches, because he was always aware of what was coming back at him. And if you've ever boxed before, there's a difference between you landing punches to hurt your opponent and landing punches to keep your opponent off. There's a difference. When you're landing and you're committing, you're driving your punches straight through the target, your feet are planted. If your feet are planted, there's always the possibility you're going to walk straight onto a shot. But if you are, not fully committing with a shot, you're just trying to hit punches, throw punches and step back, you are now bracing yourself for any shots that do come. That's why Vladimir was able to ride certain punches and get away from certain punches when Dave was throwing this pretty wild-looking overhand right, which, for me, I'm not sure how many times it hit the target. So, okay, so we're looking at that now. So, someone would say here that I'm a Haye basher. I'm not going to say I'm a Haye basher. I backed Derek Chisora to beat David Haye. But at that time, when I backed Derek Chisora to beat David Haye, I thought, for me, that Derek Chisora's style was more complete than it actually was. Derek Chisora's style, for me, is very effective against guys that are taller fighters, guys that are shorter. Like I said before, he's on his height. The bobbing and weaving is not the same, because when Derek Chisora bobs and weaves against much taller fighters, you're hitting the top of his head. When he's fighting against guys his own height or are slightly taller, like David Haye, he's open to getting hit on the chin all the time. And he was getting hit with so many punches in that fight. And he did ride punches and he did take the shots. But at the end, I think Derek was frustrated, hence the reason why he threw the punch that he did, which was a very, like I said, can't describe what sort of punch it was, but it was that sort of a punch which David got himself in a beautiful position, landed a shot and knocked Derek over. But I have to say in that fight that Derek pushed David, and David Haye was blowing hard in that fight. He looked extremely tired in that fight, extremely tired. And so for me, I still remain, there's question marks about David Haye's stamina. People say, David would say, oh, you know what, the strategy is for them to get out there and push me for 12 rounds, but it never works. Well, I would beg to differ. I think Derek Chisora was testing your stamina pretty well there, and I'd like to see what would happen if you had an opponent that would have been able to not have made the mistake that Derek Chisora made, because I think it was a mistake Derek Chisora made out of just pure frustration. But you're probably thinking now, I'm a Haye hater. I'm not a Haye hater. I'm just looking at things through the way I see them. Let's go on the other side. Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury, for me, has come up the hard way. People say he's had bum fights, but he fought an unbeaten Brazilian and knocked him out. He fought Derek Chisora, who was unbeaten at the time. And although people say, oh, well, Derek wouldn't come in shape. Look, Derek went 12 rounds with Tyson Fury. He went 12 rounds with him and threw the kitchen sink at Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury took those shots, came back, and outpointed Derek Chisora. End of conversation. Okay, and at that point in time of Tyson Fury's life, he's openly said that he did not take boxing as seriously as he does now. And of course, you've got the Paycheck fight where Tyson Fury was floored, while I think it's Paycheck, where he was floored and hurt, but came back and stopped Paycheck. Okay, people say, oh, well, Fury's got no chin. I have to remind people at that point in time, Fury was clowning around, calling Paycheck in, and bang, got caught with a shot, went down, cleared his head, got back up. And he's been through that as well again. I will bring that up again, when he got knocked down by Steve Cunningham. A similar situation. Go back and look at the video. Tyson Fury was caught with the same overhand right punch while clowning around. Look at the Steve Cunningham fight. He was clowning around at the end of the first round, came out in the second round doing the same stuff. Bang, right hand, he's on the canvas. Paycheck, he's playing around with Paycheck, taunting Paycheck, bang, goes over. So for me, although Tyson Fury has gone down, he's got back up. People say, oh, well, Cunningham caught him with a great shot and dropped him. Look, Cunningham and Paycheck are two guys that were prepared to get inside and have a fight. Something David Haye is not prepared to do. If he was prepared to do that, example, the Valuev fight, he would have got in, threw more punches against Valuev and get out. David Haye's not like that. The only time David Haye gets in and throw those sort of combinations is when he's got you hurt. That's the only time David Haye gets in there. Otherwise, you know, he's going to throw his bam and get out, bang, get out. But not combination punching. For me, not on the inside and stay on the pocket. David Haye doesn't stay in the pocket. And so, when people talk about Cunningham and how Cunningham threw that punch, Cunningham was prepared to stand in the pocket. He was prepared to have a war with Fury. And forget about that was a boxing match. That was a pure war. It was personal between Cunningham and Fury. And by the way, I'd love to know what's going on in sparring at the moment between Cunningham and Fury, because Cunningham is one of Fury's sparring partners. That would be very interesting. But anyway, so you put this all together. Both guys have been down. Both guys have been hurt. But there's another thing in this mix now. David Haye has been out of the ring for a year since the Derek Chisora fight, and he was, for all intents and purposes, retired, and he was only going to have a Klitschko fight. Question mark is, and of course he lost that weight when he went into the jungle. He's going to put it back on to fight. What sort of state of mind is David Haye in? Did David Haye even really consider wanting to fight Tyson Fury? And why is he fighting Tyson Fury now? At the pre-fight press conference, Tyson Fury dominated the press conference, and David Haye had really very little to say. Now, I don't know whether he had very little to say because he felt that Tyson Fury was talking so much that he couldn't get a word in edgeway, or he actually met his match. He's met somebody there who really does fancy a fight, or David Haye doesn't fancy it anymore, or he really believes that he's just going to go there and just knock him out, knock Tyson Fury out. To me, I was pretty disappointed with the press conference. For me, I didn't see any fire in David Haye. I haven't seen any fire in his eyes or when he's talking about things. I'm hoping that between this video and, you know, September 28th, that we hear some fire out of David Haye, because at the moment he's just coming across as somebody who's like, you know, I'm gonna have to fight this tall guy and I'm just gonna have to knock him out. And that's how he's sounding at the moment. He's sounding very, I'm just gonna take this in my stride, I'm just gonna throw my punches, I'm just gonna take him out. Now, is it as simple as that, David? I don't think it's as simple as that, and I think you know it's not as simple as that. So he's now 32, David Haye, or 33. So he's not getting any better. I don't think David Haye's getting better. And so it's what David Haye's got left. Question I'm going to ask boxing fans here. Is David Haye in the peak of his career? Is he coming to the end of his career? Or is there still more to come? For me, I think he's coming to the end of his career. For me, personally. I don't think the guy's active enough. He doesn't throw enough punches. Yes, he's a haymaker and he does throw big bombs, agreed. But that is the only thing that Haye's got for this fight, the big punch. If David Haye cannot knock Tyson Fury out, he doesn't win the fight on points. Okay? He doesn't win the fight on points. And that's basically how I see it. Now, I remember being in the gym as a former boxer, being in the gym and having a much longer reach than a lot of my opponents. And my trainer would say to keep the fighter, and let me see if I can get myself in the camera. Right, okay, there's my reach. At the end of the jab. Now, if Tyson Fury can keep David Haye at the end of a jab, and my trainer would say if you're any good with the height and the reach, you should be keeping guys at the end of the jab. Now, if Tyson Fury can keep David Haye at the end of the jab and make David Haye walk onto right hands, I believe it changes the fight completely. For me, Tyson Fury has to hit David Haye hard, early, very early, first round, get out there, bang, hit him and say, hey, you're in with a heavyweight. You're in with a heavyweight now that wants to take your head off. Alright, not Valuev or Vladimir Klitschko. I personally want to rip your head off and Tyson Fury is able to get inside. He'll be able to rip body shots and uppercuts inside. And I'm of the belief that when this happens, that Tyson Fury will get on the inside when he's on the inside and be the better man inside and will bully David Haye on the inside. I also believe that from the outside, Tyson Fury can dominate with a jab. The only point of this fight where I think that David Haye is dangerous is the middle ground. Why I mean middle ground is the point of time where Tyson Fury is not throwing punches. That's the time where David Haye can throw his punches, and that's the time where he's dangerous, or when Tyson's about to throw a punch and is able to throw in between David Haye's punches. But for me, I think if I were training Tyson Fury, I would be telling Tyson Fury, basically, when David Haye stops punching, attack. When David Haye finishes an attack, he's open and vulnerable. Then close him down and throw your shots then. That's when you hunt him down, force him to fight, force him to throw punches, lots of feints, force him to throw his punches, and when he misses, counter him. And for me, I think this is how, you know, to fight, and you've got to stay behind a jab. Keep behind the jab all the time, all night long, behind that jab, pumping that jab in David's face all night long, and ramming the right hand in, and hurtful, heavy punches, and lean on him and bully him and make him fight, and show him that he's only a cruiserweight. Because for me, a good big man beats a decent small man, and that's where it is for me. David Haye, of course, has got knockout power. And for me, if Tyson Fury goes out there and taunts David Haye, dropping his hands by his side, and does what he did against Pycek and does what he did against Cunningham, then he's going to get knocked out. Done business, he's getting knocked spark out. And Tyson knows it himself. Peter Fury knows it. He will get knocked spark out. He will not be looking up at the lights and trying to get up, because David Haye hits ferocious with that right hand. But I actually don't think that's going to happen. I really don't. I think it's too much on the line. I think Peter Fury is going to be in his corner, and we'll have Tyson fighting under orders and instructions. And I think that Tyson's going to outman him in this fight. I really do. So I look to see Tyson Fury out-muscle, out-hustle, out-box, and outwork David Haye. And yeah, the salesman comes to an end in this. If you listen to David Haye is a fantastic salesman. Listen, you know, I love David, don't get me wrong, I love David Haye, and I love, you know, the charisma that he has. David Haye could sell you a car, yeah. He could sell you a car with no engine and tell you it'll get from 0 to, you know, to 100 in 10 seconds, and you'd believe him, because David Haye is convincing, he's charismatic. You know, he loves his fans. You know, he has his open workouts and invites people for his days to meet him, and he goes the extra mile when it comes to being a boxer and a PR. He's fantastic for that, and being the celebrity that he is. But I just think, for me, he should have fought Manuel Sharp. Should not have fought Tyson Fury, who was hungry. And for me, this is the end of the Haymaker. I'm afraid to say. If you're banking, for me, yes, David Haye's got power. I'm not disputing he hasn't got power. I'm not disputing that. And he's got the one punch that can turn the fight. I'm not disputing that. But that's all he's got. That's it. And people say, well, that's enough. Is it? Was it enough against Vladimir Klitschko? Was it enough against Vladimir Klitschko? You know, and it's not to say that Tyson Fury hasn't taken heavy punches before. It's not to say that Tyson Fury has not been a hard fight before. In fact, if you look at their heavyweight division and David Haye's entrance in the heavyweight division, You can't really say he's been in any real big tough fights, really grueling fights. I go back to the Monty Barrett fight. Then David Haye actually engaged in a shootout with someone, he got dropped. And if Monty Barrett can drop David Haye, if Locke can drop David Haye, if Carl Thompson can hurt David Haye, if Mormet can stun David Haye having skidding around the ring, believe me, I believe that Tyson Fury can do damage as well. I mean, people forget that David Haye's chin's not the greatest either. So, I think, he was talking about how David Haye can hurt Tyson Fury. Remember, people look at the Cunningham fight. Cunningham had never been knocked out. And Cunningham, when Tyson Fury was finished with him, Cunningham was knocked out unconscious. Okay? And a lot of people like to forget that. They always remember that punch that dropped Fury, but they forget that he got up and finished off a cruiserweight late on in the fight. Not early rounds, late rounds. Stopped Cunningham after being dropped himself and in a fight with a much smaller, much faster heavyweight. So, in closing, I picked Tyson Fury to win this fight by stoppage. If it goes to the cards, a unanimous decision to Tyson Fury, but I don't see David Haye winning this fight. I know I'm going to get some haters on here telling me that I love Tyson Fury and I hate David Haye and all the rest of it. It's my opinion. If you don't like it, well, that's just tough luck. It's my opinion. You've got a right to say what you have to say. These are my thoughts and my opinions. Of course, I'm not clairvoyant, because if I was a clairvoyant and I could see the future, I certainly wouldn't be on this channel doing this prediction. I'd have the lottery now, and I'd be making millions upon millions, giving predictions away, getting them all right. And why would I be giving it to YouTube? I'd be making much more money elsewhere. So, this is just my thoughts on how I see the fight. Let me know what you guys think. Be interested to hear what you got to say. But that's it. This is my prediction. This has been Ingram Jones. I'm out.